Everybody, it's Joe Roberts with 1WineDude.com. It's been a while since we've done a video, so I got a little bit tired of typing. I'm doing a lot of content recently, and I just wanted to bang out a video really quick, and I'm going to apologize right now to those of you who, which is probably 99% of you, who don't think my face is all that beautiful, because it's not. But anyway, I do have an interesting topic for the geekier among you that is something I've been thinking very, very deeply about, and it actually is in a way impacted my ratings, my grades for wine, which will be interesting to talk about in a couple minutes. But the topic is rating inflation. And what that is generally is the belief that ratings for prominent critical sources of wine, Wine Advocate, Wine Spectator, Wine Enthusiast, etc., have crept up over the years to the point where high scores don't mean quite what they used to mean, or that the highest of the high, or some thresholds, like the theoretical threshold between 89.1, which is tougher to sell, and 90.1, which is easier to sell, that we're somehow eroding that because of the value of those, because of the inflation of the scores, the numbers, the grades, whatever that are given to wine. And I think there are arguments both for and against this. Rather compelling ones. They impact me, and I want to talk about both. And the first one I want to discuss is actually the argument against scoreflation or rating inflation. I think it's actually a very strong argument. I'm going to explain why. The argument against it is that it actually does not exist, which kind of sounds probably like, what are you talking about? Bam, we're going to come out of nowhere and just eliminate the argument by saying it's false on premise. And I'm going to say, yeah, actually, I think that is one way, a legitimate way to look at it. What I mean is, at the time that most of the critics for these established critical sources on wine, when they first came into being, a lot of crappy wine was made, a lot of bad wine. So the bar that constitutes what is a solid wine that's worth talking about has more or less, you could argue, stayed constant with some of those reviewers. And the argument there is that because they've been on the case for so long, and you have much less chance of getting a crappy, unclean, flawed, just really poorly made bottle of wine at the store next to wines that are clean and are well made. I mean, the odds of you finding those wines today are fairly small, and a lot of that has to do, I think, with the influence that critics had on the wine world at that time. I mean, we're going back 20 years or so, but they served notice. I am just old enough to remember the days when you could buy extremely bad, poorly made, flawed, just faulty wine on the store shelves. Now, you could then argue, I think, quite logically, that ratings have not inflated. Wines have just gotten better. That pretty much is the argument that those critics make, and I'm going to say I think it's a pretty strong one. There is an equally compelling argument, though, that there is, in a way, score inflation. And that is that not that the scores themselves have inflated or the wines haven't got better, it's that the sand has shifted in the winemaking world under the feet of those critics and pretty much anybody else who's over the age of 40 or 45. When you think about it, the millennial generation, and I know some of you are watching, lurkers, the millennial generation just getting into buying wine now, we've talked about this many times on 1WineDude, pretty fearless about how they approach wine. They don't remember a time when there was that much bad wine on the market. They don't know a time when Argentine Malbec was $10 or $8 on the shelf and was a screaming bargain. They don't remember that being a novelty. They don't remember a time where it was extremely difficult for them to indulge whatever stylistic preference they had. And chances are, if you're a millennial, statistically, I think chances are that that preference tends toward more vibrant wines with higher acid in them. You don't remember a time when it was different. In that case, the scores for someone, say maybe they are actually a bit skewed, and a bit too high because they're not taking into account the fact that where the bar was set between wines that weren't very good and wines that were starting to become pretty good is therefore set a bit too high. It could be that fairly good wine is now really average wine. Now, why am I talking about all this? Well, I'm talking about this to tell you that my wine grades, the way I approach wine, the way I grade them, isn't going to change. Now, it's a long-winded way of saying I'm not going to do anything differently than I've been doing it, but there's a very good reason and a lot of soul-searching that went behind that. It's not because I'm lazy, at least not in that way. I'm lazy for other things. I really thought about this because when I tasted the Romanée-Conti 2010 vintage not too long ago in New York and was really wowed by the purity of the wines, I really got to thinking that I was being too hard on a lot of other wines that showed relatively favorably, especially Pinot Noirs, in comparison with the Romanée-Conti wines. Not that they were coming close to the majesty or whatever you want to call it of those wines, but that I thought I'm being a real hard ass. And I've done 4 wine competitions this year, and I've had masters of wine like Mary Lou Mulligan essentially tell me that I'm a tough grader, and that some of my grades are hard ass. Now, when somebody like that tells you that, guess what? That's like the 5-year-old coming to you and telling you you're ugly. They don't lie. I mean, if a 5-year-old tells you you're ugly, okay? If the master of wine tells you you're a tough grader, you're a tough grader. And I thought about that, and I really started thinking, well, when I'm on the fence on the wine, I'm going to need to push up and maybe not down. And then I got to start thinking about you millennials out there and realize that the sands have shifted. The bar actually needs to be changed. And therefore, I've come to the conclusion that the score inflation is at least partially real. It's real only in so much as the marketplace now is working. It reflects better wines. It reflects the availability of those wines. Millennials, largely in the fine wine sphere, aren't putting up with wines that I would have even considered average 5 years ago. And so they're starting by attrition, I think, to get pushed down. And therefore, I say, cheers. Sorry, I don't have a bottle of wine here, or a glass. I need to go get one. But I want to say virtual cheers anyway to the hard asses out there. I think we need to be fairly critical. We need to stay focused and accept the fact that things have changed, that things do not stay static, particularly in the world of wine. And you know what? If you want to be hard on something and you want to enjoy it but still be able to call out the faults or still be able to call out the unbalanced portions of wine that you taste, hey, I say go for it. Call it as you see it. You know what? The only thing that's going to happen, at least is what the last 10 or 20 years of history is bearing out, the biggest thing that will happen probably is that we'll get higher and higher quality wines, and in that for lower prices, or at least at the same prices. And in that case, everybody benefits. Anyway, food for thought. Until next time. Cheers.